with the Russos. The amazing thing about Rousseau is that he was such an incredible genius of color. I mean, he was really a painter who understood so innately the weight and the resonance of each color plane, so that if he judges a plane down here at the K side, and he judges that great horizontal green he adds here, which slightly modulates, with a tiny bit warm here, a tiny bit lighter here. He judges the rapport between them in such a way that there's a magic rapport created right away. And then that beautiful, dense green that he gets here, again he modulates it, but it's so perfect, and he's darks. So the dark arches of the bridge, which come into the hull of the boat that's moored here, which and the dark thing of the man here, they're amazing, and it's so difficult to do this. It's you know, painters such as Derain, Picasso, Leger, Pissarro, Renoir, Chagall, they all thought this man was one of the glories of French painting. And nothing to do, I mean, you know, when people think of primitive painting, they think of Grandma Moses or something like that, which is, I mean, to me, nothing to do, in a sense, with art. This man was a great, great painter. You can learn so much from him. The mysterious density of the greens that he gets here, and then the changes he gets, and this is so difficult to get. You're working with the kind of tawny, tannish gray that you get here, and you're working with a different change when you get to the facade of the building, and how well he keeps these. It's like a musical thing, a beat that he gets. You'll have this way, way down. You see that greenish color there? You'll have that brown here, the down, and then he picks up a bit, and he gets this very marvelous warm piece here on the vertical. And of course, as he draws, and he feels you constantly feel the force of that horizontal, and then the beat of these verticals against it, and the change in pitch as he goes from these tiny things to a larger thing, and that one red plane. One little bit of red flame making this enormous light, sort of lighting up the painting as it poses all these greens. But the density, the sonorous sort of density and equilibrium of his color, I don't think, very, very few painters in the history of painting can really match that. I mean, he's an extraordinary painter. Now, there's a painting I'm told doesn't hang often in the museum now, but it's a painting I really also like very, very much, and I'm told there's been some controversy about whether or not it's a Rousseau. Well, to my mind, it really, really is a Rousseau, because again, if you look at the color and see what the man has done here, and you look at the changes here, you see there's sort of a red form, whether it's a cloth or something, behind the candlestick, a red triangle. And look at the changes he gets between that red, the stability of that particular purplish, brownish kind of red, and then a little orangey thing to the red here. It's like 1, 2, and then it gets these grace notes, a cadmium red light. Oh, I'm so sorry, I walked into it. Good Lord, sorry. A cadmium red light on the liquor bottle, and the two reds, one radish standing, one radish lying down, and that beautiful light that he gets here, that little light playing here, and modulated so nicely as he comes down the cloth here, and made very, very blue on the lip of the saucer, and that dull pink of the candle perfectly balanced against that whole brown form behind it. I mean, if that's not a Rousseau, I'll eat it. I mean, it's bound to be a Rousseau. I haven't mentioned a great painter. I maybe should, before I forget, I want to get the painter over here, starting with Susan over here. I think perhaps it's not lit as well as the other paintings we've been looking at, but I feel that I've always felt good about the Phillips Gallery having these later soutines, because the prejudice with most of the art historians of modern art, and therefore the prejudice of most of the museum conservators, is to hang the Surrey period of Soutine, and certainly there are some great paintings in that period. I mean, without doubt, there's a lovely landscape that the Museum of Art always hangs. The Museum of Modern Art hangs all the time. But you know, the Museum of Modern Art never hangs this homage to Corot of Chartres, which is of this period, and which is a fantastic painting. And when you look at these Soutines, I just have to get, so I don't get the glare on it, but I'll move over here. But he, in a sense, is very, very far away from the painters that the museum curators today want to have him as a precursor for. They love to say, Soutine is someone who was the precursor for the abstract expressionist painters. And I know very well, I remember years ago on 7th Avenue meeting Bob De Niro, the painter Bob De Niro. And he said, I just talked with Bill de Kooning on the phone, and Bill is saying, all I want to do is just paint like a copy of a Soutine. You know, I know Bill de Kooning loves Soutine, but the difference between what de Kooning does, which is like an arabesque derived really a great deal from Gorky in turn, who derives it from Miro and Picasso, etc., and done very well. The color in de Kooning has none of this weight and impact and density which you find in the Soutine. And of course, the reason they relate this to the abstract expressions is something to do with the handwriting. The fact that you see a thing doing this, or a thing moving like this, or coming like that. But all of that has to do with the fact that Soutine was a painter who worked always directly from the motif. He had to have that woman in front of him, that man in front of him, that still life in front of him, or that motif that they would search for days on end and find in the landscape, for instance. And that would turn him on. And then he would work directly in combat with that. And he had to have sort of a telegraphic way of working, because what he's doing with the color is extraordinary. I mean, these two children coming back from school. I'm sorry for how badly it's lit, but if you see the bottom of this diagonal plane of the road, and then you see what happens with the top, you see the tension between what he does with that plane at the bottom and then that light form at the top, and how you just get that light form driving behind the children, and the two children are sort of launched into that space. And his marvelous use of these greens, a great form of a yellow-green here, and then this crazy sort of cipher green with white that he gets here, and then a pickup on that kind of thing that happens zip here, but then he holds, he contains it by this piece, this plane of green he has here, and then the dark that he comes across here, and that marvelous sky, which of course in its diagonal flight relates to the diagonals he has here, and the whole thing becomes a tight, integrated thing. But it's as though Soutine was able to grasp the interior drama of his motif in a marvelous way, in an overwhelming way. And I think many painters appreciated that about him. And I think Soutine himself, though, the only painter I've heard him make good remarks, or rather, I didn't know him, the only painter on record that I've read that he made a good remark about in the 20th century was of course, Rouault. He thought, well, Rouault had something there. And what Soutine really loved, he loved Rembrandt, he loved Tintoretto, he loved Titian, he loved Courbet, he loved Corot, and we saw these marvelous late Cézannes at the National Gallery, but he didn't dig those Cézannes. He felt that those were already too intellectual for him. They didn't have the immediacy of what he needed. But it's a beautiful Soutine. Another beauty is the one that Matisse used to own, this dead pheasant here, and also you see this one of the young girl, and the way he proceeds in a steady, direct from the model, and the changes that he gets, that marvelous orange vertical plane, that orangey vertical plane, which has a marvelous kind of light and resistance to it, and what he does with that brownish light plane of the forehead, and then the light which comes in this part of her nose and the upper part of her mouth, and the crazy vertical plane here of a golden kind of ochre that gets here, and he really sort of gets those things working. This little sketch is so nice, it's so rewarding to get involved with. Now, I'm sort of pacing myself because there's so many things we're going to see here today.